Hello everybody and welcome to Parks Bros. Today I wanted to just talk about what Magic Mountain could be getting in 2019. Now it's being thrown around a lot lately that it's going to be a Mack coaster of some kind. What type of kind, we don't really know, but I kind of want to talk about each different type that I think could go to Magic Mountain. But we definitely need to start this off by talking about what's going on in Cyclone Bay. Now, if you don't know, Cyclone Bay in the back left corner of the park is being completely redone. We were just there this past week, and half of Cyclone Bay's buildings have been completely torn down. There is nothing left except for concrete, and that is it for most of the buildings on one of the sides of Cyclone Bay. Now, whether this happens to the other sides, we don't know yet. We will have to wait and see for that. But this is definitely pointing towards something that's going to be big. Now, how big, we don't really know yet, but hopefully we will find that out in the next couple months when they announce it. If they announce a coaster for 2019, if not, it will be for 2020. But let's get back to Cyclone Bay. Cyclone Bay is being rumored to be renamed and rethemed to Adrenaline Alley. This name was trademarked shortly after MaxxForce and West Coast Racer was, kind of pointing in the same direction that there's going to be this new theme around race cars and racing, which this has actually been reported on Screamscape for a couple of months now, that it was going to be a Mack coaster that was based around racing. Now, on Screamscape it said Hyper, but I don't know. I could honestly see a launch coaster going in the back. Now, you may be saying, Drew, they already have two other launch coasters in the park. Both of them also have a backwards launch. Yeah, I know, Superman and Full Throttle, but those aren't, first of all, long coasters. Superman is not even 30 seconds, and Full Throttle, in its full length, is not even a minute, I don't think. So I really wouldn't mind a longer launch coaster at Magic Mountain. I mean, they are calling themselves the thrill capital of the world, and they don't really have a lengthy launch coaster. Now, another thing you could bring up is that they don't have a spinning coaster. Now, we all know that Mack Rides has created a spinning launch coaster, which they debuted as Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City this year, and I do think it's possible that we'll get a Mack spinner. I do think it's the least possible out of the three options that I'm thinking about, but I do think it is something that Six Flags may have considered, considering that Time Traveler has been so well received by pretty much everyone. I haven't heard one bad review about it. I've heard some okay reviews and good reviews, but nothing just bad, plain out saying the ride is not what it was supposed to be or not as good as they thought it would be. Everything I've heard about Time Traveler is good news. And this brings us to our final coaster type that I think would be coming to Magic Mountain, and that would be a hyper coaster. Now, they do have Goliath as a hyper coaster already, but it's more of a twister layout. There's only one airtime hill, and you maybe get 2 pops of airtime depending on where you're sitting in the ride. But there really isn't any more modern hyper coaster that we've been seeing by the likes of Intamin and B&M, and even with DC Rivals Hypercoaster in Australia made by Mack, that really shows how hypercoasters have changed over the years, with Goliath being from 2001 and more of that early model where they were just trying to get up to a higher height. And now you have I-305, which is, yes, a Giga Coaster, but it's the same type of layout that you would see for probably a hyper, that has crazy airtime, crazy intensity, a lot of bank turns. Maybe it's not the best example, but if you've seen DC Rivals Hypercoaster, it has a non-inverting loop, a couple airtime hills, a lot of bank turns that just are twisting and going all over the place. It's pretty impressive to see what they can do now, especially at Mack Rides. I would love to see this be a hyper. This is my, if I had a want list at Magic Mountain, I would love to see a Mack Hyper or a Mack Giga even more at the top of my list. Now, will it be a Giga? Probably not, unless they signed some sort of deal with Mack Rides that would mean they were bringing a lot more Max over in the next couple of years. But I mean, it was said by, I think, the park president after Tatsu was built that they weren't gonna spend that much money on a coaster ever again. And that was around 25 million or so. So I don't think it'll be a Giga. A Hyper is kind of stretching it too. So we'll really just have to wait and see for that. But I would love to see a Hyper. Now let's talk about Apocalypse, because Apocalypse is being retracked right now and probably for the next couple of months. And I kind of want to figure out a new theme for it. Because Apocalypse, like the Apocalypse theme, the world is ending, just doesn't fit with a whole racer area, with it being like Adrenaline Alley. Now I could see it totally being, I saw this suggested on Reddit, that it should be a hot rod or a body shop, I can't remember which, but like an old rundown body shop that still has that one really nice hot rod that's just been under the covers and in the back corner of the barn or something like that. I would love to see it like that, almost like if Lightning Rod became old and broken down, but it still had that beautiful car underneath in the queue itself. But I love that idea of making it an old abandoned hot rod or body shop or something like that to fit more into the racing theme. I think it would fit a lot better. Now the wooden coaster itself, like it being a wooden coaster, doesn't really scream car to me, but I don't think it ever will, just because you're not going to see like a wooden car or anything. Maybe like a steam engine, but I don't know, it just doesn't scream car to me. But if it was to be made into like a body shop, I'd probably appreciate it a lot more if the entire area is being changed. Now, we don't know that. We don't know any of this really technically. We don't know it for 100% sure. It's just being very highly rumored that a Mack coaster is coming to California, and a lot of people are saying it's going to Magic Mountain for next year. So we'll see. I do think it's going to be called MaxxForce regardless, because Max is spelt with two X's in Roman numerals is 20 for the 20th coaster at the park. And I really like that idea that they kind of were actually smart with it. At first we were like, that's kind of a weird name. Oh, silly Six Flags. But then you actually look at it and you're like, hey, that's kind of smart. Now, if it is a launched coaster, I do think that the station will be adjacent to Apocalypse and it will launch with like a top hat or something over the pathway to get into the back area where Deja Vu used to be. But if it is a Hyper, I do think that the station will probably be in the same spot, but with just the chain lift going right out of the station over that same piece of pathway. Now, we don't really have enough information to really make out anything yet, but I think it would be logical to be doing that because there is the most amount of room in that area behind where Deja Vu used to be and where there's that Fright Fest maze at the moment. And I kind of want to just add this in as a little sprinkle of nothingness, really. I want to see a yellow track on this coaster. I know that's weird. I know it might get, bleached out in the sun like most do at Magic Mountain in particular, really. But they don't have a coaster with yellow track. I mean, you have Goliath, which is orange. They have Riddlers, which is a yellow support beam. You do have Gold Rusher, so I totally forgot that that has yellow track, but it's Gold Rusher. So, I don't know, they just don't have a big coaster that you can see from multiple parts of the park that is bright yellow, and I would love to see that. Especially since there's not many coasters that are yellow. And I also think Mack does a great job with their paint jobs, because have you seen DC Rivals or Manta? Oh, they look beautiful. Especially DC Rivals, I love that, like, purple/pink. It just looks so good, at least in the sunlight. Now, I can totally get behind the coaster being car-themed, regardless if it's a launch coaster or a hyper coaster. Now, if it's a spinning coaster, maybe, not so much. Now, if it's themed around like drifting, you could pull that off. But I don't know, spinning coaster just doesn't seem right to me as a car theme. Now I can get it if you call it drifting, but if it's just like F1 or NASCAR, it just doesn't make sense to me. But I really want to know your guys' thoughts on this. I'll put a poll in right now. What do you think it'll be? A Mack Hyper, a Mack Spinning Coaster, or a Mack regular launch or multi-launch coaster? Let me know. I'm really interested to see what you guys think. And also, let me know what you think Apocalypse will be rethemed to. Whether it will stay the same, or be like a body shop, or maybe even something different that I haven't thought of. But thank you guys for watching. Make sure to check out the links in the description below. Like and subscribe. We are definitely going to be looking more and more into this as we get closer and closer to the announcement for 2019 for Six Flags. So subscribe if you haven't, so you can keep up to date with this coaster and all the news behind it. And as always, we'll see you on the next ride.